So one of the main points that I want to talk about today and kind of instill in you to take away from the webinar is about noticing this geometry in life and the geometry that makes up the composition of a great photo. Because the geometry is almost like, it's like this hidden framework within a photograph. And it's how we use all these lines and all these shapes that we see in the world to form our photographs. It's like this scaffolding and this framework that we can use in whatever scene that we're photographing to make strong images that capture people's attention. And so I use this image for the introduction to the webinar, just to kind of introduce that concept, because when you look at an image like this, you can see these super strong lines and you can see how they add to the drama of the image. And also when you have the little factor of the two men just walking across the wall there, framed in that little square, that's what the image is about. And that's what geometry is about, and using the geometry of lines that you see to create these images that have real visual interest for people when they're looking at your photos. And so for that particular situation in this image, I found the frame, I found the scene, I saw that the sun was setting, so I was shooting into the sun. I framed the bridges as I wanted them, and then I simply waited for these two people to walk into that particular position, and then I got the image. Similar in this situation where I was taking a picture within a sandstorm in Beijing. So you can see the geometry of this image is how I'm using those lines, the track lines. And I'm getting really low, getting a low perspective to make sure that those lines are a really dominant part of the frame, and how they lead you through the image towards that woman carrying her bike across the train tracks. If you want to really accelerate your photography's development, consider joining my mentorship program. When you join my mentorship program, you'll get one-on-one video calls with me each month, daily chat through your social media platform of choice, and you'll also get the opportunity to join my community of other mentees to learn more about how to develop your photography and your photographic storytelling. All the info about the mentorship program can be found in the links in the description. And so when I'm looking at my archive, I'm looking for patterns, and I actually find them in so many of my images. And you can see, if we go top left, you can see the geometry of the bridge with all those strong lines, which contributes to that image being really powerful, drawing your attention in, especially to the three figures at the bottom. Then in the top right, we have the diagonal line of the path running across the image. Bottom left, we have the path running through the frame, taking you all the way to the man walking across the ridge line there. And on the bottom right, we have the lines running across. This is a drone shot of a logging yard. But again, it's all about the geometry. It's all about using those lines to create an interesting and impactful image. And so these lines appear everywhere. Now here on the left, I'm on the coastline of China, and I'm using the line of the curvature of the pond. And on the right-hand side, I'm using the curvature of the pollution as it's running through a river. That's the Ganges River. But again, on both of these images, you can see the curvature mirroring each other. So these patterns and these lines can come in nature as well. They don't have to just be man-made. So you can always keep your eyes open for these forms within either man-made structures or within nature, and use them to your advantage when you're making pictures. And in a similar vein, a great way to enhance your images with your compositions to make them stronger is to look out for patterns and shapes, because the human eye is drawn towards both of these. And so if you can use them, it can contribute to making your images much more stronger and impactful. So if you look at the image on the left, again, another drone shot, You could see that I'd focused in really tightly on this plantation and used the patterns of the bushes as the focus to make that impactful shot. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that I used the circle in the trampoline as something to draw your attention to and use those strong shapes. Do you guys have any questions so far about these? Okay, I'll keep going on. So the other concept, as well as using the geometry, whether that's lines or patterns or shapes, the other concept that I want to move on to is about the different elements that you use within your composition. So one of the techniques that I like to use is the single point of interest. So this is quite self-explanatory. And this is where you're focusing just on one subject within the frame. And you're really simplifying the frame to make it all about that one subject. And I really like to frame my single point of interest, normally right in the middle of the frame, often in the center, because what I think that does, it provides the image with a really lovely balance and symmetry. And again, the human brain and human eye love balance and symmetry. And so you're using these techniques as photographers, we're tapping in to these ways that the brain just likes to view the world. And with a single point of interest, if you have it right in the middle, in the center, and balance it, then you can create the symmetry, which makes a really simple but powerful image. And that comes through in these two images. The one on the left is of a young boy in the deserts of northern China. And the one on the right is of a man pushing his bicycle into a sandstorm. So very simple, but actually underlying it is the composition techniques of balance and symmetry. Most people won't think about it, but it's a technique that, you know, in your mind as the photographer, you can use to your advantage. Then moving on from one point of interest, if you look at the image on the left, you can see that we can start to think about using 2 points of interest. So in the image on the left, you can see the 2 points are, one, the tree on the left, and second, the man walking out towards the tree. So what this does, again, it also provides a balance with the frame, and it creates this connection between the two elements, which starts to tell a story. It starts to give the viewer an idea that something is happening between this connection between the two elements. And if you can move beyond two elements or 2 points of interest within your frame, then you can start to think about using multiple points of interest, like in the image on the right-hand side. And we touched upon this by mentioning Alex Webb's work. Now, of course, this starts to get more and more difficult the more elements that you bring into a frame. But if you're able to capture the multiple points of interest in a frame, like in this image on the right, which I took in Cambodia, then you can create a really interesting composition where you're balancing multiple different things across the frame. And in that picture, you can see we've got obviously the two main subjects, which is the boat in the center, but we've got the bird in the foreground, but also we've got the tree and that pole. And overall, there's this really nice balance across the frame because we've got those elements in those particular places in the frame. So those are the two main concepts that I wanted to cover today. And actually, when we look at your photos in a moment, actually both of your photos incorporate some of those things that we talked about. So we can have a look at those and that will kind of come through quite clearly, I think. But just in case you haven't seen these two videos on my YouTube channel, make sure that you have a look at both of those, especially the one on the left. That's got a really good summary of all my favorite composition techniques. But if you're obsessed with lines as much as I am, make sure to check out the one on the right.